once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me on Facebook, Pal Talk, and on YouTube. And I believe the third time is the charm. My guest is John Daly from Daly and Marino. They are medical mal attorneys. This is the third time we've tried to do this interview, John, about what's going on in the nursing homes across the country, and more specifically in New York State. You and I have been spending so much time together. I just want to make sure that I'm not on the clock, because I know how you attorneys are.
Gary, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I assure you, you're not on the clock.
Oh, yay! Because your time is far more valuable than mine. I really appreciate you taking this time.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we really wanted to do this interview, and I appreciate John's perseverance, because it's a very serious issue. We're kind of, laughing about the technical difficulties, but in all reality, this is a very serious situation. So let me just recap for people who don't know. What's happening is people are dying in large numbers because in nursing homes and assisted living facilities across the country, because we have in those facilities the most vulnerable. The statistics show that the vast majority of people who are dying are over the age of 60. And of course, in these facilities, the patients are all pretty much over the age of 60. Many of them have compromised immune systems. And if the COVID-19 is introduced into the facility, there's a good chance it's going to spread like wildfire. We just saw in Massachusetts at a home for aging veterans. People have put their lives on the line for you and me. 70 people have died, 70 in one facility alone, because of the coronavirus. And this is absolutely horrendous. And it's bad enough, John, when the COVID-19 is introduced inadvertently. A staff member who is asymptomatic comes to work and it spreads through the facility. That's almost unavoidable, because we have no way of really testing people before they come to work every single day, present themselves at work every single day. But this situation is magnified tremendously in New York State, where you practice law, in the New York City area, where we have a governor who has issued a decree that COVID-19 patients are actually being put into nursing homes. In other words, the nursing homes and the assisted care facilities have to accept these patients. I don't understand this ruling, this decree.
We're confused about it too. On March 25th, the governor issued an executive order or directive, basically saying that the law requires that nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities admit and readmit residents regardless of their COVID status. And unfortunately, that allowed many residents who were COVID positive to come into a facility and infect residents who were not COVID positive. And it's led to a lot of unnecessary deaths.
And the governor's aware that there's pushback on this. There have been people in the media who've questioned him about this. Just yesterday, the former U.S. Senator Al D'Amato, called this an absolutely crazy decision on his part. And by the way, I just want to point out, although Al D'Amato was a Republican, he's been a supporter of the Democrat Cuomo. So he's not just saying it for partisan political purposes. He's saying it because it's a real issue. So I want to ask you, John Daly, from a liability standpoint, are these nursing homes necessarily indemnified from negligence if they follow an order that's been given to them by the governor?
Well, this is what's so troubling for the families of nursing home residents. The governor, in his budget, the fiscal 2021 budget, issued an executive order that provides immunity from negligence in a nursing home for negligent care to a resident. And this is really a curious decision, because now the nursing homes do not have liability for negligent care during this COVID crisis. So there's no incentive for them to act appropriately. In fact, they can rely on this immunity and provide substandard care. And unfortunately, nursing homes as a whole in downstate New York were understaffed prior to COVID. I believe that the governor and the health department just aren't aware of what drives the owners of these nursing homes. And what drives the owners are profits, not taking care of people.
Well, you just expanded our discussion tremendously, John Daly of Daly and Marino attorneys in New York State, because we're not just talking about the order by the governor to put people into nursing homes if they have previously tested positive for the COVID-19. We're talking about immunity from negligence. So I, as a loved one of a person in the nursing home who might normally be witness to what I believe, rightly or wrongly, is negligent behavior by the nursing home, I'm not in there to collect the evidence. The person is not necessarily dying as a result of the COVID-19. It could be for other purposes. And you're saying that by this executive order, I can't take any action against that nursing home should my loved one die based on what I believe is their negligence.
Well, as it stands right now, there is a directive, there is an executive order that provides immunity. Whether that executive order and that immunity is going to hold up, that's something that we're going to be challenging in the courts down the road. Right now, we're more concerned with the families and helping them get access to their loved ones, to get information about their loved ones. Gary, I've gotten at least 50 to 60 phone calls and emails over the past few days from folks who have loved ones in nursing homes, and I've heard some horrific stories. People who weren't even told that their loved one had died until 4 or 5 days after their death. Their bodies were already taken away. Family had no opportunity to see their loved one before the body was removed from the facility. People who have mothers, fathers, aunts, and uncles in nursing homes just for rehabilitation, meaning they may have had a surgery and they needed to go to a nursing home for a few days for rehab, ending up getting COVID, end up on a respirator, and the family doesn't even know about it until they're deceased. So I think there's going to have to be some investigation done by the Department of Health. Certainly, I'm going to be working with families and trying to help them through this time. And then there will be a time later to look back on this. I can tell you that just today, I spoke with a nurse who works at a facility in Upper Manhattan. And I'm going to leave the name of the facility out for right now and leave her name out for right now. And she's told me some horrific stories about what she's watched in the facilities, in the nursing homes. And that includes PPE, masks, gowns, equipment in a basement not being given to the workers, 911 not being called when people go into cardiac arrest and just left there to die. Some horrific stories. And like always, the truth will come out at some point.
Well, the problem always in these cases is your best witnesses are the employees, because they're right there and they know what the real truth is. The relative may only suspect what's going on. And right. and they, of course, are working at many times substandard wages and just trying to eke out a living. And they want to keep their jobs. And so they're motivated, firstly and understandably, to maintain an income for their family. So how do you get around that in a case such as the one you just described?
Well, in this case, the nurse I spoke to was so upset about what she saw, she had to leave the facility and could no longer work there. And she happened to be a person who volunteered. She worked at another facility and came to help. And what she described to me was something that you see in some of the worst horror movies. This particular facility did not increase their staff once the COVID pandemic hit. They really acted just like they did before. And what I question is this immunity that's been granted to these facilities all of a sudden now provide in their minds a blanket of protection so that they don't have to act appropriately. And if something happens, if somebody passes, they can't be held accountable for it. I think it was a bad decision by the government to provide this immunity, and I think we're going to see a lot of deaths as a result.
Yeah, I would think, and I'm just giving you my personal opinion based on my feelings, not based on what counsel might recommend to me if I were a nursing home owner. But I would think that on the first part of the decree that we discussed, where the governor says you have to admit or readmit people with the COVID-19, I'd refuse. I think I would refuse. I mean, what's the worst they could do? Take legal action against me? It just seems that common sense would prevail, and I would not try to hide behind, I was directed to do this. I think if you're given an immoral order by government, you should defy that immoral order. Isn't my first responsibility to protect the lives and the welfare of my staff and my patients?
Yes, it is. And I think that the frontline workers in the facilities, the nursing assistants who provide most of the frontline care, the certified nursing assistants, the floor nurses, I think they're doing everything they can. However, the management and the ownership of the nursing home, their agenda is quite different. And every time, in fact, the governor alluded to this in his press conference just the other day, every time a nursing home loses a resident, that's money out of their pocket. They want to keep those beds filled because an empty bed is less money for them. And that's the driving force behind owning a nursing home. It's a profit business. And I believe that as a result of this immunity, you're going to see an even lower standard of care. That's going to result in people who may have survived not surviving. And that's just a shame.
Now, what about if I have a relative who's in a nursing home and I'm trying to get information from that nursing home about whether COVID-19 is present to their knowledge in their facility? And I may or may not get that information, but I want to make an informed decision about the well-being of my relative. And I want to remove maybe that relative, figuring the odds are better bringing them home and giving them home care, even though they deserve the kind of extended care that I probably can't give, that the nursing home is supposed to give. But I'm not given that opportunity. Do I have some kind of legal recourse?
Well, at this point, it would be, you're describing an acute situation, and attempting to resolve it legally you don't have enough time for that. My suggestion would be, if you're a family member and you are not getting information, keep calling the facility. If they do not respond, go down to the facility. Ask to speak to people. Ask to speak to somebody. I believe at this point, with the curve flattening and the number of cases and the number of hospital admissions going lower each day, I think you'd have a better opportunity to be able to get into the nursing home and ask questions. Be the squeaky wheel. Don't take, we'll get back to you for an answer. Go down there, demand information. If you don't get any, people can call my office, access me through my website, and we've helped a number of people so far get information about their loved ones.
Well, I'll tell you, you know that question is not hypothetical by your answer. You actually are in real time, in real life, taking care of these kinds of questions. And correct. I just want to tell the audience that for me, it's not hypothetical either. Not that I have anybody in a nursing home at this moment, thank goodness. But people have come to me asking me, what can I do? Because it's kind of odd when you're covering these kinds of stories. They should be probably calling you or another medical malpractice attorney for advice on what to do. And I have told them exactly that. Get on the phone, contact them, demand information. I had not even thought about suggesting to them, but I will in the future, that they go over there and knock on the door and say, hey, I want to know what's going on with the treatment of my loved one. They may not let them in the building, but at least you're there in their face. It's harder to turn somebody away when you're face to face with them than it is to ignore a telephone call, which is relatively easy.
In New York State, you can also call the New York State Department of Health. Their number is online. You can access it. They're supposed to investigate every single complaint of a failure to provide information, failure to notify of a death. Whether they're going to do so remains to be seen.
Well,
but it can't hurt to call.
And there's probably in other states, maybe not all of them, but in other states, a similar process in place that people can go to their individual state website and try to get that information. And if you don't get the information and you're really worried about your loved one, I would recommend in your environment picking up the phone and calling John Dolly's counterpart where you live, because the Bar Association will be able to help you.
Yeah, you can do searches online. You can find attorneys that can help you. The bottom line is you want information, and you don't want to let the nursing home shut you out and refuse to provide you information about your loved one's health status, their COVID status, whether they're alive or dead. Like I said before, Gary, I'm getting phone calls from families who've lost their parent, who were never told that they passed away until 4 or 5 days later. No opportunity to mourn, no opportunity to see the body. That's just unbelievable and shouldn't be allowed. It
is unbelievable. It should be allowed. And also what shouldn't be allowed is me mispronouncing your name. It's Daly, John Daly, not John Dolly. I don't know how many times I mispronounced your name, but I apologize for that. With a name like Baumgarten, I'm very sensitive to that, because you cannot imagine how many times my surname has been botched, even on the air, by people I work with.
My name's been mispronounced in second grade, Gary. I'm used to it. No problem.
Okay, so listen, here's the thing, John. I have a suspicion that on the other side of all of this, you're going to be very, very busy litigating. And I want to have you back on to talk about some of that litigation, because we need to do a follow-up on this story.
Happy to be here anytime, Gary.
Well, so long as we can figure out the technical issues, we will do that. John Daly from Daly and Marino law firm in, I think it's Garden City, New York. Thanks for joining us today on Facebook, Pal Talk, and on YouTube. And success, finally.
We'll keep fighting.
Thank you, sir. Peace out.
Take care, Gary. Bye-bye.